Okay, welcome to our first part of the software overview, and let's start with the interface. So, right in the middle, you see the so-called viewport, where almost everything happens, where you see your scene in 3D, okay? On the left of it is the outliner, which shows everything that there is in the scene in a list view, okay? It shows if the object is visible or not, if it's enabled or disabled, if it's interactive or not, and it shows its material, right? You don't see it here because of the render mode right now. But anyway, on the right side of the viewport, there are some tools, mostly to create sketches, work with sketches, and to create simple objects. On the bottom left, there are tools to manipulate with objects mostly. Just as the right one, the bottom left is static. The buttons don't change, unlike the menu in the bottom right, where you don't really see it because we have nothing selected. So if we select something, we can see some settings, some tools for the body. If we select a face, it shows tools for the face. If we select an edge, it shows tools for an edge, and so on. So yeah, they are dynamic depending on what you have selected. On the right side, there are just like some stacked stuff. It's not there is no real logic in why it's on the right. It's just some settings. So one of them is grid snapping, right? Let's just like show it, for example. You don't really have to follow me at this point. It's just, so maybe if you need to go back and look how the tool works, you can follow me, but you don't have to at this point. So yeah, it's grid snapping. The settings here are grid density. Below here are the other snaps, and you can change it here. Below here is our work plane management. We will talk about it a bit later. And lower is our performance stats, which is, it's very nice to see your FPS is maxed out. And if you have something selected right in the corner here, it will show you everything about selection. Okay, so on our top left, we see the selection modes, right? So for bodies, for faces, for edges, and for vertices. We cannot select anything here because there are no like real vertices here, like no real points. We will talk about it later in a bit. You can activate them by pressing 1, 2, 3, 4, or shift clicking or shift pressing to select multiple, or you can just press 5 to select everything. Okay, just 5 for everything. Now it works not very obvious in the fifth mode. It has some smart features to it which are honestly very useful. So if we select something like this, you would expect for it to maybe select the face and some edges on top, but it will not do that. That's because we don't have the face the body selected. It will only select the stuff that's on the selected body, right? And that might be really helpful if we are working in a very dense environment, right? So let's say we want to select the right face of this cube and not select the same basically face in space of the cube on the right? So we select this cube and we select the face. Amazing. Yep. So on the right side we have our gizmo with axes that represents where our camera is. We have perspective mode, right? If we right click on it, we can change the FOV. I usually like to have it somewhere around 44 or 33. It's why 44 and 33 is just it's easier to type quickly. On the right side from it, we have the overlay, right, which you can activate by Shift Alt Z, which is exactly the same as in Blender. You cannot right click, there are no options for that. You cannot right click the overlay also. I mean the X-ray mode, right? So again, X-ray, just like in Blender, Alt Z, or by pressing here. And our rendered mode, which is, you know, everything that we have in the material tab, right? Like metalness, roughness, our other options. But just like with the perspective, we can right click and now we have a lot of stuff. So the first mode is the default one. The second mode is our glossy red, which is really nice to maybe model some surfaces. Next, the horizontal and vertical zebras to check our surfaces when we model something very fluid. Next is the matte cap that's like soft and glossy, but it acknowledges our color of the material. On the right from it is basically the same thing, but a bit more contrast. I prefer to work in this mode, actually. Or sometimes maybe if it's a bit too dark, I use the previous one. Here we have the fully like black to check the silhouette. And the last one is to check the colors, right? We can also change if it's showing edges or not, and if it's showing faces or not, which I'm actually not sure why would you turn it off, but whatever. Okay, so let's quickly talk about navigation. So we have a lot of navigation presets. If you want to make it just like in maybe some other software that you're using, you go Preferences, and here you can have a navigation preset. Even though there is a default one, I think most of the people use the Blender one, and so I would probably call it the real default. And if you have no other preferences like Maya, Moe, 3ds Max, I would advise you to go with the Blender one. Okay. You need to restart to apply changes. We'll talk about it in a bit. So just like in Blender, if you're not familiar with it, okay, you use Shift middle mouse click to pan. You use middle mouse click to orbit around, and you use Control mouse click to zoom in and out by dragging the mouse up and down. So now let's talk about the theme. The theme is again in Preferences, Appearance. You can change some stuff here. I don't know, like you need to restart it to apply the changes again. Now the thing about restarting it, you have a hotkey for it. Control Shift R, right? And it restarts the software right away. And oh, did it? Okay. Pressed it again. It worked. It helps whenever it maybe there is a bug or something. Also, and let's talk about one thing. It's probably a bit different how you see stuff compared to mine. You probably see something a bit closer to this with a thicker, like more contrasty lines. And that's due to the setting of line color, right? So you can right now only change this in the file, but I will include it in the tutorial. You will be able to just copy and paste it. It should be in your drive, users, your username, and a folder called .plasticity. Okay, here you have the file theme. And here you have to manually add, again, it will be included, no worries, you won't have to add anything, but by default, this option is not there. Right now, if you will want to change any of this, this is basically RGB and alpha in hexadecimal view, right? So you just need to change alpha to make it less contrasty, and I have 8F, which is 50% basically, and then you just save it and whatever, right? You forget about this. You never need to use it again. Yep. Let's now talk about the types of stuff that is in this software. So at first we have curves, which is sketches if you come from some other software. Basically, it's just lines, or maybe a plane that is created by lines, but it's not really a plane as like an object, real one, interactable. Anyway, we'll get to it, right? So if we click the line here or press Shift A, we can just draw in 3D space. It will give us all the, actually, we talked about this before, snaps, right? Like guidelines. So we can just like, and we can snap by pressing Shift, right? And right click to confirm. Again, right click to confirm for everything here. So yeah, it's on the plane. Yeah, Shift A, snap to this angle, snap to this angle, snap to the guide, and snap to this angle. Now it's in 3D. Okay. Depending on where you snap, it's gonna draw it in a different plane. Yep. So those are curves. Now, after curves, let's talk about solid bodies. By the way, what does a solid mean? It means that it's obviously defined where is the outside and where is the inside. Right? So if we select this and extrude it, it automatically gives us the prompt to extrude, but we can press E if this didn't happen, right? If we extrude something, it gives us the solid body, right? Like we know where the outside is, where the inside is, unlike the sheet bodies, right? Like, so if we take a couple of faces here, we delete it with Shift X, not just X, or maybe we separate something by pressing Alt J, right? And if we select it as a body, we can now move it. It's now a sheet. Okay, so you cannot do everything that you can do with a solid body here, and yeah, but sometimes you need it. When? We will talk about it later. Okay, so the thing I have to tell you slightly before is that I use a software called how is it called actually? Auto Hotbuy. Which is basically a hotbuys for buttons that you create, that you can create yourself. You can find this just by googling Auto Hotbuy. The first link is GitHub. It is free. It's completely. Again, you don't have to use this, but it's just for me personally. I'm gonna use it. So if you wanna follow me the same way, you can go here, press releases, right? Just check on whatever is latest and download your exe file, and yep. After that you can configure it. So you can like change whatever you have here. By adding the key here. Right, and then you just save and run, and I have it automatically run with Windows starting. So yeah, I have it on the dot and the / for focus and isolate, and if you press it again, it will unisolate. Let's, by the way, quickly hide this thing by pressing H. Okay, that's great. So yeah, the next thing is work planes. It's actually like not. Let's talk about it right now. Okay, so you can either select a face, press space, right? It will use this face as a work plane to like draw only in it, right? You while you can snap, it will snap it only in this view, right? So it won't be 3D. It will be everything on one plane. You can set the work plane in a different way, though, is by pressing shift space. It will do the work plane, but without going into the camera orthographic view. I mean, based on like this face, right? Like this. But now, okay, you might think that it will only draw in this face, in this plane. No, it will. It won't. You can still draw 3D stuff with it. Why is that? And what does this work plane do even? It's like creating a new global coordinates. So if you like, oh my bad, press anything here, it will be in this orientation right now, right? My bad. So it creates like a new global axis for it. And yeah, you can also just like press Control Space, and it will create the work plane out of our view, right? So out of the camera view. So it will be, you know, if you would want to maybe like cut it with the camera view, here you go. We will talk about it later, no worries. Okay, so constraints. It's like basically it's the same word for snapping, right? It's very easy to use. You don't really have to think about it too much. So let's try to do a flat face like this, right? To it. How you would do that is you would select the face, press space to go into the orientation, and just start drawing somewhere. And you see we have a guide and snapping for something called Z, which is like it basically does the auto tangent in here. You cannot see it touching because it's represented in a like a polygonal way. But like under the hood, it's touching it right in this dot. Well, at least I hope so, right? Yeah, and again, as you saw, it doesn't recognize this as like an extrudable face because we don't have it as a work plane. But if we set it to work plane, here you go. You can select this and extrude it. It will automatically edit to our body. Right, you can change all the settings here. By the way, whenever you do something with an active tool, you will always have all your hotkeys on the bottom right. So yeah, and now you can see it's perfectly snapped, like it's absolute perfection, without really clicking much. You can, for example, you know, like go in here, and let's say like you want to continue this line, right? You can either try to find out the guide yourself, or you can just select the line and press shift, and it will create the guide that's always visible. Now let's say we want to go it like this, and we press shift, and we want to go parallel to this line. We select it, we press shift. Amazing, right? and we wait. What's next here? I think that's pretty much it. I am actually not sure why I have this separated, but let's just do it like in my references. Maybe it's important. I cannot remember right now. I'm sorry. No worries. We will. Like again, this is not really the part where you have to follow. You can follow. It's gonna be helpful, of course, but you can just like look through it. And whenever we will have our real practice, you will just you could just go back and see all the details about this tool. And yeah, so don't stress about it too much. It's really not the important part right now. So yeah, see you in the next one.